I had to get my hands on the Fractal Meshify 3. The photos looked clean, it had a minimal vibe but with a bit of spice, and you know guys, that's just what I like. In this video I will show you a full case walkthrough, a full build and then a review. So let's open it up. So the first thing you might notice about this case, just like me, is that it's a bit of a stubby. It's short from front to back, which might initially sound bad, but it's not. Actually, you don't really need a huge case for your PC, do you? You can fit pretty much any hardware you want in here. Max GPU length is 349mm, which is great. It can fit an RTX 5090 Gigabyte gaming OC, for example. CPU cooler height is 173mm, plenty for even huge coolers like the NHD15 by Noctua. Radiator support is 240 or 280mm in the top, or if you really want to, you can go for a 360mm in the front. Realistically, that is going to be enough for what 95% of people are using in their gaming PCs. So let's shell the panels, popping off the back, popping off the glass, and then sliding off the top. I'd advise to just leave the front alone, unless you're swapping out the fans for some reason. If you really do want to take the front off, you simply lever it out from the bottom. It's held on with pogo pins and a couple of plastic pins. You can also take out the top fan tray, which gives a little bit more room to work with when you're putting your motherboard in, which is pretty neat. Starting from the back, just make a note that the power supply shroud is one of those where you take this faceplate piece off, attach it to your power supply, and then slide it in later. It's a little bit of a faff compared to a normal setup, but overall it's not a big deal, and I think it saves them a little bit of space on the final case, and that's why they do it. In the cable management chamber, we've got two sleds here, which can be for 2.5 or 3.5 inch drives. I think just two of these is going to be plenty, so I'm not going to complain about not having more storage options in the case. Nowadays, most people just use NVMe drives and nothing else. If you've got a bunch of hard drives with data on them, you may as well get a NAS. You could put a couple in here, and then everything else could easily go on a NAS. On the left, you'll see a simple and elegant cable routing system. For me, this is absolutely perfect. It's not over-engineered, it's just simple and good. There are two big routing holes and there are no grommets to wrestle with. I hate grommets, they just pop out and I think they look really ugly. I prefer just a gap like this. I like what I'm seeing so far in the Meshify 3. Cables are for the included fans here, as well as the power switch, HD audio, USB-C and USB-A. There's also a nice hub included with the Ambience RGB models. Now to the presentation chamber, we've got a nice sloped edge here, which in theory will guide air towards the components, particularly your video card. The PSU shroud is perforated. It would be nice if there was a front cutout for the video card power cables, but what are you going to do? Maybe it just didn't work. There's a removable cable cover here on the side which just clips on and off. There's also a removable plate at the back where the graphics card slots in. You can fit ITX, MATX and regular ATX motherboards in here. It doesn't appear to be motherboard back connect compatible, but to be honest, I don't care. I think that is all just a huge waste of money. There's an RGB strip that runs along the side of the case for illumination as well, and it's perfectly diffused when you see the final outcome. I like this single slot here for motherboard cables, which I think is a cleaner way to do it rather than having lots of several separate holes. Moving to the front, there is a fine mesh with a nice geometric pattern. The RGB version includes 3 Momentum 14 RGB ring fans, and the Ambience version adds a light strip around the front frame and along the side as well. The Momentum fans are actually USB-C fans, so they'll only be compatible with the included hub. But if you buy a Momentum fan, then you can get the USB to 5V ARGB adapter. So there is a way out if you don't want to use the hub, but ideally you do use the hub. Here are the included screws and extras that you get with the case. So that's the case tour, but shouldn't we build an actual PC to know what it's like? Yes is the answer to that. So designing this PC, I wanted a pure white build. So I looked for a white graphics card, which isn't always easy, but I did land on the RTX 5070. This is the ASUS Prime version. It hits that sort of upper mid-range price point, which means I'll have a reasonable chance of selling this PC on my website when it's done. It's not too expensive, but it's also not too cheap. I agree that 12 gigabytes of VRAM is not ideal for this class of card, but for most 1440p games, it should be just about okay. We'll pair this up with the Ryzen 7 7800X 3D. This will provide excellent processing power for high FPS gaming. If you've got a spare 80 quid, then you could go for the 9800X 3D. It's going to depend on the gaming that you do. If you're usually into CPU-bound games, things like Valorant, CSGO, Fortnite, etc., then actually springing for that 9800X 3D might be worth it if you're a very competitive gamer. But if you play more GPU-bound games, like big open-world games, it's not going to make any difference, so you might as well save the money. The rest of the parts we're going to introduce as we build below. So going into the build now, you can see that we're using the B850 Steel Legend Wi-Fi by AsRock, which is actually a really nice B850 motherboard, and it's white, which is the main reason we chose it. I found this M2 SSD cover was a little bit awkward to remove, but it does have double heat sinks on it, which is always welcome. Now the SSD we're using is just a T500 PCIe Gen 4. We use this as a test SSD. Really, you can use any NVMe SSD. I would recommend something with DRAM, and if failing that, you'd have something with HMB at least. If you don't like that top M2 SSD cover, you can use a more traditional style at the bottom here, which you just screw in place with a single-sided heatsink. For the memory, we've used this XPG Lancer RGB 6400 CL32. Pretty nice kit, actually. It's white, it's RGB, and it looks pretty sweet. I think 32 gigabytes is just about the right amount. Obviously, with any RAM, you need to make sure you're clicking it in at the top and the bottom, and starting off in spaces 2 and 4. CPU, we talked about this earlier, it's a 7800X 3D. Fantastic CPU power and a little bit cheaper than the 9800X 3D, whilst retaining quite a lot of high-end performance. When you're placing your CPU in the socket, you need to take real care here. This is probably the most delicate part of the whole build, so really gently place that CPU in there so you don't bend the pins. You give it a very slight wiggle to ensure that it's safe at the end. Then of course you just close that socket back down again. Never throw away this piece of plastic, because if you need to return the motherboard for any reason, you will not be able to if you throw away that piece of plastic. For CPU cooling, we've gone with the Liquid Freezer 3 by Arctic. Now this is considered probably the best liquid cooler you can get, especially for the price. This is fantastic. I always start this one by plugging in the plugs on the side here, which is going to allow you to control your PWM, etc. You're going to fold that round the back here for better cable management. Now you don't use the built-in mounting hardware, so you're going to need to take this off. Place these standoff pieces here, these spacers, and then you can put the two arm bars on the side. I like to pre-thread the screw. Makes it a lot easier to put that in there rather than trying to sort of balance the screw through it whilst you've already got it laid down. You're going to put all four corners of that on, and you're going to put a thermal paste on. Don't think about it too much, just a garden pea size amount. Don't forget to take the plastic cover off, and then actually mounting it's pretty easy. You just mount up the two sides here with the posts on that mounting hardware that you've just put on. I've used my phone here to get a closer angle because I want to really show you that you want to go in between each side. You don't want to tighten all of the one side down first. You go bounce between left and right. This is the faceplate. We're going to actually leave that off for now. I just wanted to show you what it will look like at the end because it will fall off if you're moving around too much. We're going to attach our Momentum RGB fan at the back. That's an additional one we bought which doesn't come with the case. The case only comes with 3. I quite like these USB-C connections. They're a little bit chunky, but it does make things a lot easier and you can just slot that into your hub. Next we're going to get our cable extensions ready, and these are EZDIY fab, and I'm just using the 24 pin and putting the cable combs on there to make it neat. You only need one cable comb for the 24 pins, and then of course for the 12 volt high power cable we've got an extension cord there as well. Power supply is the Gigabyte UD850, gold rated, PCIe Gen 5 and a reasonable price as well. I'm going to hook up all those modular cables, and we're going to secure it to the back plate and then slide it in cables first and then secure the back plate onto the case. Next is powering this hub, which is done with a SATA plug. It's a little bit fiddly, but you'll get it eventually. Another tip that I like is to run the CPU power cable first. It makes it easier to mount the motherboard, which is what we're doing now. I'm going to gently lay that into the case. You can pop the liquid cooler just down to the side for now. Hook up your CPU power cables like this, notch to notch. You don't have to put them both in, but I think if there's two, you might as well. And then obviously you're going to use the motherboard mounting screws in all 8 or 9 positions, depending on your motherboard. Fix all those down, we'll speed through that because it's a bit boring watching somebody just do the same screw over and over again. I'm going to put the top fan bracket back on, and that's going to allow us to mount the liquid cooler. It is integral to the structure of the case, so you have to sort of hold it with one hand and then use a screwdriver to put that screw back in place. Now it's a heck of a lot easier to keep your liquid cooler in a sensible position to screw down with the case on its side like this, so I definitely recommend you do that. And you just get one corner, don't tighten it fully, just get it sort of tight just so it holds it in place, and then get your opposite corner in place, and from there then you can just go through and fill in all those other screw slots. You obviously need to hook up the PWM cable from the hub and indeed from the liquid cooler as well as any ARGB 5V cables also. I like to pre-route all my cables through here before putting the graphics card in and any other connectors. We're going to put in that HD audio plug down in the corner, we're going to put in that USB 2 plug for the hub, and we're going to put the power switch on as well, and you don't really need any of the other small plugs there. Next is the 24-pin cable. You're going to reach that round and plug it into the slot. Put your cable comb behind the metal divider piece that you see on the right there. It's going to make it a lot easier to get that cable in place. And then we're just going to release a couple of the PCIe slot covers to allow our graphics card to go into place. And speaking of the graphics card, we know this is the ASUS Prime RTX 5070, beautiful white card, and it's going to give us lovely 1440p mid-range performance. So with any graphics card, you just line it up with that PCIe slot, get it nicely in place. Sometimes you have to sort of play around a little bit, make sure you get it in the right spot, and then give it a firm push in until you hear a click. And of course, we're going to secure those screws down at the back. This is a 12-volt high power cable. Now you'll see I really make an effort to push it in really hard because these connectors have to be snug. And then we're going to put our faceplate back on our liquid cooler to make it look nice. Finally, we'll tidy up with a bit of cable management. These cable clips that come with the case are fantastic. These are amazing. So you just push it over and there you go, all done. And I think the cable management is decent in this case. It can look really nice, especially with those cable extensions. I'm really happy. And here is the final result, which I'll leave you to enjoy now. So the PC looks nice, but does it perform well at 1440p? Here we are in Warzone, 1440p. This is just the balanced preset. I didn't change anything else to try and make it easier to compare. You can see we're getting 220 FPS here. Next up is Apex Legends, and despite my teammates getting baited by a caustic trap, I was able to clean up and maintain about 270 FPS with decent 1% lows. This is at 1440p on the maximum settings, so I'm very happy with this. Running into Fortnite now, this is where we're going to play it on our low settings with maximum draw distance, the competitive settings, getting around 400 average FPS here, and very good 1% lows to boot. And now jumping into Cyberpunk 2077. This is just the built-in benchmark of the RT medium preset, so we can see what the ray tracing performance is like on this graphics card. And then we do get quite a nice average FPS of 99, which is going to be plenty for a story-driven game like this. At 1440p, I think that's fair enough. If you're interested in benchmarks, we've got the Unigine Heaven benchmark on screen there at the Extreme preset, and we've also got the Superposition benchmark here as well, although I don't find that as useful as in-game footage. Now moving into the thermals, these are fantastic. 100% load for 30 minutes. We've got the CPU under 80 degrees C and the GPU under 70, which is excellent overall. And then for the acoustics, these are fantastic. We've got it off and idle at about the same sound there, and at 100% load, only 40 decibels, which makes it a really quiet machine, and that's thanks to the Arctic liquid cooler doing a fantastic job. Okay, so thoughts on the build. Nice design, pure white, compact, stylish, great 1440p performance, and I think this Arctic cooler, it's a little bit tight in the top due to the thick radiator, but it just about fits. And I love how these Arctic liquid freezers look now, much better than before. The only slight snag is that the coolant pipes are a little bit too long. I've got around that by cable tying them to the fan mounts inside the case, and you can tell me whether that looks janky or not. I think I've got away with it. So overall, I'm very pleased, and I would be a fool not to mention that if you live in the UK, you can buy this PC from my company, PC36. We do it in a variety of spec levels as well, so upper or lower than this, or even better if you want a full instruction guide to build it yourself. We're working on a digital build guide coming soon for this one. That's available globally. If you've never even touched a screwdriver or a motherboard before, I can take you through the whole process from start to finish to build a PC that looks exactly like this. And of course save the money because you're not paying somebody else to build it for you. Okay, time for the review now. I'm going to split this into aesthetics, engineering and performance, then the pros and cons and the overall value for money. So starting with aesthetics, the Meshify 3, it's a classic style case which bucks the trend nowadays, which is more along the dual chamber fish tank style. Aesthetics, it's always going to be personal, but I really love how this looks. I think it's exceptionally sleek and refined. The pieces flow beautifully, there's nothing jarring in the design. The lighting on the Ambience model is actually kind of calming because it's really nicely diffused. I really like the smaller size. I think it's sensible, I think it looks nicer, and it's going to fit better on your desk as well. But of course, it's a personal preference. So is everything in aesthetics when you think about it. When we talk about engineering, it's not just the build quality, it's also how thoughtful the design is. Have they thought of the end user actually building in this case, and what have they done to make that process better? The materials used in this case are very high quality. There's no flex in the case, it feels rigid. The parts are designed nicely, there's nothing rough around the edges about this case. One of the standout features from a building point of view is the cable management clips. They're these big, thick, heavy clips that you push in, and that's holding those cables down really nicely. It's actually a lot easier than using cable ties. I think it's a really nice design overall. The included hub works really well. You simply connect it either via USB 2 or there is a converter to use your motherboard's 5V ARGB plug as well. The only problem with that is, of course, if it comes with 3 fans, if you want to fill the case out, you'll also have to buy one for the rear, and these Momentum fans are not cheap. I think the drive cages are quite a nice piece of engineering as well. You don't waste a lot of space with having ones that are only suitable for 2.5s, only suitable for 3.5s. These are adjustable, you can use them for either kind. And 2 drive cages, that's going to be plenty for a modern system. I quite like the air scoop on the front here. Does it actually make a difference? Who knows, I'm not a scientist. Well, not on this channel I'm not, but anyway, moving on. I like the sort of modular design of the case. I like that it's toolless. You can pop the front off without doing anything. You can pop the top off, you can pop the back off, but there are options to screw that in place if you want to transport it, or if you're just a bit more paranoid about that kind of thing. I like that you can take the top piece off in order to mount your radiator, or just to give you a bit more space to put your motherboard in. I like that as a feature. Because of its compact size, it's slightly tight in the top for those thicker radiators like you get on the Arctic liquid freezers. If you're using a normal AIO up here with a normal thickness, this would be absolutely no trouble whatsoever. So it is unique to these Arctic ones, but in fairness, it does fit. And you can get a 280mm in the top. It doesn't push it back, it pushes it forward in order to make that extra space. So you're not going to have any problems with hitting your motherboard components unless you've got a stupidly overbuilt motherboard. Right, and now it comes time for the performance. So I'm not a scientific YouTuber, I'm not doing any highly accurate, proper scientific testing. I focus more on the design and if it's going to work for you day to day. I can tell you that this case has plenty of cooling and you'll have no issues with virtually any system in here. As you can see, our thermals are really well controlled, which is the only thing you really need to know. The actual minutiae of the difference doesn't matter unless you're an overclocker. The shorter case length actually helps airflow because you're not pushing air through a load of dead space. It's all going to go on your components. However, the downside of that is no top 360mm cooler support. You can get a 280mm in the top, which is going to offer very similar performance, and if you're using a Ryzen 9 or an i9 or an i7, definitely go for the 280. On the Ryzen 7s, you're going to get away with the 240 no problem, particularly if you use a good one like an Arctic Freezer. So overall, I love the Meshify 3. I think it's a fantastic case. I think it looks amazing. I think the performance is great, and I think the build quality is very high. But would I recommend this case? Probably not, actually, and that might be a bit of a surprise. The reason is that this case costs way too much money. This Ambience Pro RGB version is about $240 at MSRP. I think that's utterly ridiculous for this kind of case. I think it should be half that, if not a bit less. Think of what you can get from other brands that maybe doesn't have quite the polish that this one does, but is about 90% of the way there, and you can get that for under a third of the cost. So I think they really need to look at their pricing here. I would not recommend this unless you really must have it. Okay, so there's no more information now. This is just me asking for feedback, so if you don't care, leave. So I could have made this video in 3 parts. I could have done it as a case tour, a review, and then a fancy sort of build montage. But I thought, why don't we just combine all of them into one? And trim it down a bit, trim the fat and save a bit of time. I don't know if you prefer that, or do you think this is going to be better in 2 or 3 separate videos where I can go into a little bit more detail at each part? Maybe you wanted a bit more detail on how I actually put this together. Maybe you want a bit more detail on my thoughts on the case. Let me know. We can do it in separate videos if you like, but I was just trying this out as an all-in-one solution. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.